There was a time when winter wasn't just a season. This is the story of how medieval London survived its deadliest winters. It is the early 14th century. London is one of the largest cities in England, protected by stone walls and filled with narrow streets, wooden houses, busy markets, and towering churches. Most people live in small timber-framed homes with little insulation. The wind slips through cracks in the walls, carrying freezing air into every room. Outside, smoke rises from hundreds of chimneys as families struggle to keep their fires alive. The River Thames flows beside the city, serving as London's lifeline. It brings food, fuel, merchants, and travelers from across the kingdom. But as winter tightens its grip, even this mighty river begins to freeze. The streets that were once crowded with merchants and craftsmen grow quieter each day. Snow covers rooftops, market stalls, and narrow alleyways. The cold becomes impossible to ignore. For wealthy merchants and nobles, winter is uncomfortable. For the poor, it can be deadly. Many families can barely afford enough firewood to survive the week. Some burn broken furniture or scraps of wood simply to stay warm through the night. Inside their homes, children gather close to tiny fireplaces while parents wrap them in thick wool blankets. Even then, the cold never truly disappears. Frost forms on windows. Ice creeps across wooden walls. The fire burns low. And outside, another snowstorm approaches. As temperatures continue to fall, food becomes just as valuable as warmth. The busy markets that once overflowed with fresh vegetables, meat, and bread now stand nearly empty. Merchants guard every sack of grain. Bakers work from sunrise until nightfall, knowing hungry crowds are waiting outside their doors. Every loaf of bread could mean the difference between life and death. Families begin saving every piece of food they can. Salted meat, smoked fish, cheese, dried peas, barrels of grain. These simple supplies must last until spring. Because once the roads disappear beneath deep snow, bringing new food into the city becomes almost impossible. Winter has only just begun, and for the people of medieval London, the greatest challenge is still ahead. As the weeks passed, winter grew even harsher. The freezing winds showed no mercy. Snow buried roads, covered rooftops, and turned London's narrow streets into icy pathways where every journey became dangerous. Yet despite the brutal conditions, life could not simply stop. Every morning, people woke before sunrise with one goal: to survive another day. Firewood became one of the city's most precious resources. Families gathered every stick, every fallen branch, and every piece of usable timber they could find. Inside their homes, they hung thick wool blankets over doors and windows to keep the icy wind from creeping inside. It wasn't perfect, but every little bit of warmth mattered. Clothing also became a matter of survival. People wore several layers of wool, covered themselves with heavy cloaks, and wrapped scarves around their faces before stepping outside. Leather boots protected their feet from the snow, while fur-lined hoods shielded them from the freezing wind. Even so, the cold could still reach their bones. Food had to be used wisely. Large pots of vegetable stew simmered slowly over open fires, stretching small amounts of grain and vegetables into meals that could feed entire families. Nothing was wasted. Every crumb of bread, every piece of cheese, every strip of salted meat could keep someone alive for another day. The churches became places of hope. Monks and volunteers prepared hot soup and fresh bread for those who had nothing left. For many of London's poorest people, these simple meals meant the difference between life and death. Neighbors also learned to depend on one another. Families shared firewood. They shared food. And when someone became too weak to survive alone, others opened their doors without asking for anything in return. Even during the darkest days of winter, kindness refused to disappear. Work continued as well. Blacksmiths kept their furnaces burning. Bakers filled their ovens before dawn. Tailors stitched thick wool clothing by candlelight. Merchants carefully counted every remaining sack of grain. Life moved more slowly, but it never stopped. Clean water became another daily challenge. Wells often froze over, forcing people to break through thick layers of ice just to fill a single bucket. Others walked to the River Thames, carefully collecting water while avoiding the dangerous frozen edges. Illness spread quickly through the crowded city. Without modern medicine, people relied on herbal remedies, experienced healers, and prayer. Some recovered. Many did not. Still, the people of medieval London refused to surrender. They had survived every freezing sunrise, every bitter night, and every relentless storm. Now they waited, hoping that somewhere beyond the endless snow, spring was finally on its way. But before winter finally released its grip, it delivered one last merciless test. A powerful snowstorm swept across London. The wind roared through the narrow streets, piling snow against doors and covering rooftops in thick layers of ice. For many families, the firewood they had carefully saved for months was almost gone. Every log burned was a difficult choice. Every meal became smaller than the one before. Slowly, almost unnoticed at first, the weather began to change. The fierce winds grew quieter. The snow stopped falling. For the first time in weeks, sunlight broke through the gray clouds. Icicles hanging from rooftops began to melt. Water trickled through the streets. Birds returned to the skies. It was a sign the people had been waiting for. Spring was coming. The markets slowly came back to life. Merchants opened their stalls once again. Fresh food arrived from nearby villages. The smell of warm bread filled the streets. Outside the city walls, farmers returned to their fields, preparing the land for another growing season. Children laughed as they ran through muddy streets where deep snow had once stood.
You can't catch me! I almost got you!
Carpenters repaired damaged homes. The city, once silent beneath the weight of winter, echoed with life again. Every family that survived carried the memory of the cold. They knew another winter would eventually return, so they gathered more firewood, stored more grain, strengthened their homes, and prepared better than before. Medieval London did not survive because winter was easy. It survived because ordinary people refused to give up. Through courage, through hard work, and through the simple belief that no matter how long the winter lasted, spring would always come again. And perhaps, that is the greatest lesson history can teach us. If you enjoyed this journey into history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more incredible stories from the past. Until next time, stay curious.